Hello, in this lecture, we will talk about changing, adding, and removing elements of lists. Most lists you create will be dynamic, meaning you will build a list and then add and remove elements from it as your program runs its course. To change an element, use the name of the list followed by the index of the element you want to change, and then provide the new value you want that item to have. For example, we create a list called motorcycles with 4 elements for each brand. Then we can change the first element of this list to another brand called Ducati. We just assign this new value to this element. If we want to add elements to a list, Python provides several ways to add new data to existing lists. For example, this method is called appending elements to the end of a list. Here, the original list motorcycles have 3 items. Then we use append Ducati with a dot behind the motorcycles list. Then the Ducati will be added to the end of the list. And you can start with an empty list and then add items to the list using a series of append statements. Here we create a motorcycles but with no items in the list. So this is an empty list. Then we first append Honda to the list, then append Yamaha, and so on, append Suzuki, then to the end the list motorcycle will have 3 items. If you want to insert elements to a list, you can add a new element at any position in your list by using the insert method. You can do this by specifying the index of the new element and the value of the new item. We create a list called motorcycles with 3 elements, Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki. Then we can, for example, insert a new item called Ducati to the first position at the beginning of the list. So this operation will shift every other value in the list 1 position to the right, which means in the original list Honda's index is 0, Yamaha is 1, and Suzuki is 2. Then after we have inserted Ducati to the first position, then Honda's index will be 1, and Yamaha will be 2, and Suzuki will be 3. If you want to remove elements from a list, you can remove an item according to its position in the list or according to its value. So if you want to remove an item according to its position, you know the position, then you can use the del statement. For example, motorcycles has 3 items. Then we use del space motorcycles 0, then first item removed. Or we can use del motorcycles 1, then the second item is removed. You can also use removing an item using the pop method. Sometimes you will want to use the value of an item after you have removed it from a list. The pop method removes the last item in a list by default, but it lets you work with that item after you have removed it. Similarly, motorcycles have 3 items. Then we called this new variable is popped motorcycle is motorcycles.pop parentheses, which means we remove the last elements called Suzuki from the original motorcycles list. Then we assign this value to the new variable called popped motorcycle. Then we can print popped motorcycles, and Suzuki will be stored in this variable and will be printed out. And actually we can pop items from any position in a list. You can actually use pop to remove an item in a list at any position by including the index of the item you want to remove in parentheses. So the original list is motorcycles having 3 elements. Then we can, for example, pop the first element from the original list, and we called this variable the first owned, and then we assign this value to this variable. So the first item is removed from the original list and stored in this new variable first owned. And when you want to remove item from a list, and if you only know the value of the item you want to remove, you can just use the remove method. So here motorcycles is a list having 4 items. So if we use motorcycles.remove Ducati, then the Ducati, this value will be this item with Ducati's value will be removed from motorcycles. But it's very important that the remove method will delete only the first occurrence of the value you specify. If there is a possibility the value appears more than once in the list, you will need to use a loop to determine if all occurrences of the value have been removed. We will talk about the loop in later lectures. So, for example, if motorcycle, this list has 5 elements, which of 2 are Ducati. Then if we remove Ducati, only the first Ducati is removed, and the second will remain in the list. We will show all these commands in Spider, and we have opened this Python file called section 3 working with lists, and this is lecture 2 of this section called changing, appending, removing items of lists. You can follow the link on GitHub. We will update the files in GitHub for this course. So we create motorcycles list. First we will test the changing elements of a list. Then we create first this list, then run. Then we print the 4 elements. Then we change the first one to Ducati. Right. Then we call again. Then we print again. Now the first one has been changed to Ducati. And we try append items into a list. So create again, and we print this list. 3 items are included in this original list. Then we append Ducati. Try this run selection. Then we print again. Then you see Ducati has been added to this list. So now there are 4 items in the list. Next, we append items to a list starting with an empty list. So we first run this statement, starting an empty list. So motorcycle, if we print a motorcycle now, there is empty, no items. Then we can run, for example, these three statements, run selection. Then we print again. Now the list include, now list have three items. We can try insert elements into our list. Original, list, motorcycle. Then we can insert the first position with a value called Ducati. Then we print again. Now the first element has been inserted, Ducati. We can try remove items from a list. First, we're removing an item according to its position using the del statement. This is the original list. We will print this original list has three items. Then we use del the first item. Then do this. Then we print again. We'll see only two items left. The first Honda has been removed. We can also try removing this. We create again this original list. We print this. Three items in the list. Now we can delete the second item, which index has 1. Second item in the list. We remove this. Then we print again. Now the Yamaha second one has been removed. Also, we can use pop method to remove the last one. Create again motorcycle list. Has three elements in the beginning. Then we call the pop method to this list, but we assign this popped value to a new variable called popped motorcycle. Run this. Then we print motorcycle. You can see only two elements left. The last one, Suzuki, has been popped out, removed. And we print this variable is Suzuki. So actually we can use the removed value. For example, here we try again. Create original list. Then we pop this out and assign it to the last owned. Pop without index in the parentheses, which means we will remove the last one of this list, but we assign this removed one to the new variable called the last owned. Then we print, which include a string variable with concatenation with this value with a title form. Then we concatenate period symbol. So we run this. It shows the last motorcycle I owned was a Suzuki. And we can pop items from any position, actually, not only the last one. If we do not use the parent index, if we do not add index in parentheses after pop, then the last items of the list will be removed. But here we can add index in the pop, then we can pop any items in the position from a list. So create this original list again. Then we call the first owned with the popped in the first position in the list. We run this. Then we can print again this statement called my first motorcycle I owned was with this popped one with a title form and period concatenation. Then we run this. So the first motorcycle I owned was a Honda. It's printed. And we will try here removing an item in the list by its value. We create this original list with 4 elements with print 4 elements Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, Ducati. Then we try to remove the Ducati. We know the values Ducati we will remove. Then we use remove statement after the motorcycle list. Then we print again motorcycle. Now Ducati has been removed. Here we can also do some print some message. Can create again and print this original list has 4 elements. Then we call it too expensive is Ducati. Ducati assigned to this variable called too expensive. And we can use remove, but here we just put the too expensive here because too expensive's value is Ducati. This is same as we use single quotes with Ducati inside. Run this. Then we print motorcycle. Ducati has been removed. But here we can print a message. Now here is a new line symbol, backslash new line symbol. They called too expensive title. Here too expensive is Ducati with a title form. And we concatenate a string more called it's too expensive for me. We run this. So the message is printed out, a Ducati is too expensive for me.